Watchman on the Pond. All right, we're going to continue in our book reading. Romanism, a Menace to the Nation by Jeremiah J. Crowley. We are in chapter 11. Chapter 11, Rome ever and everywhere the same. Cardinal Martinelli, in 1902, at the Apostolic Delegation Office, Washington, D.C., made a most interesting statement to me. I said to him, Your Eminence, if the Catholics in this country numbered about 70 million, and if the Protestants numbered about 10 million, what would you do to the Protestants? His reply was this, Oh Christ, I'd crush them. To crush them is the spirit and design of Romanism in all its attitudes toward heretics. No wonder Rome boasts that she is ever and everywhere the same. Her real attitude toward non-Catholics is the same today everywhere as it was in the days of the Inquisition. And yet some people say the Roman Catholic Church is not as it was 50 years ago. It is more liberal. Is it? Few have any idea of the crafty efforts which Catholic ecclesiastics make to hoodwink non-Catholics. Priests, bishops, and cardinals cultivate a spirit of seeming liberality on purpose to win the esteem of the very people whom they hate, so that these people will be made unwilling to countenance any opposition to the movements of Romanism. The greatest victory which has been won by the Roman hierarchy in the British Empire and in the United States lies in the fact that it has succeeded in making it unpopular for anyone to impugn its utterances or policies. What is the smooth game in all this that is going on between the Vatican and England? Simply this: England is the stronghold of obstinate heresy, the citadel of Protestantism. Therefore, the Church of Rome is using every means at her command, caresses, cajolery, threats, flatteries, to bring proud England back into subjection to her yoke. Listen to Rome's own confession from the mouth of Cardinal Manning. Surely a soldier's eye and soldier's heart would choose by intuition this field of England for the warfare of faith. It is the head of Protestantism, the center of its movements, and the stronghold of its power. Weakened in England, it is paralyzed everywhere. Conquered in England, it is conquered throughout the world. Once overthrown here, all is but a war of details. The Heretic, Berkeley, California. The keen eye of the Vatican has, for years, been turned toward the British Empire and the United States. She is working the same wiles and witcheries, playing the same smooth, oily, ball-bearing, noiseless game with both countries. Through one of her organs, the tablet, London, she complains as follows. Prussia, not a Roman Catholic country, has an envoy extraordinary and minister plenipotentiary, Russia, a minister resident, England and the United States among great powers remain without an accredited representative to the Holy See. Mark the word accredited. England always has a backstairs representative. For example, Sir George Errington filled that office at the Holy See, to the detriment of Ireland and the Irish race during the Purnell movement. And for aught we know, the United States of America has a backstairs representative at the Vatican today. Her late secret clerical agent, there is at present a prominent bishop in America. Rome's secret representative at the Capitol at Washington, D.C., is none other than the papal delegate, who has been recently promoted to cardinal late as due reward for his single services to his Lord the Pope, King of heaven, of earth, and of hell. Her chief Jesuitical agent in Ottawa, Canada, is the papal delegate to the Catholic Church in that country. I know and assert without fear of successful contradiction that the Vatican system, the Roman Catholic hierarchy, has a grip upon all the departments of our government, from the president to department clerks, including legislative, judiciary, and executive departments, both federal and state, and the accommodating politicians, Catholic and non-Catholic, particularly the latter, are to blame for it all. Every trap is being laid to ensnare Germany, the British Empire, the United States, and other non-Catholic countries in papal schemes. In fact, the plans of Pope Leo the 13th, and therefore of the papacy, with reference to America, were thus tearlessly expressed in a letter from the Vatican. New York, Sunday, July 11th, 1892. What the Church has done in the past for others, she will now do for the United States. In a recent pamphlet issued by the Roman Catholic University of America at Washington, D.C., under the title The Roman Catholic Mission Movement in America, they say our motto is, we come not to conquer, but to win. Our purpose is to make America dominantly Catholic. The Very Reverend Francis C. Kelly, D.D., LLD, President of the Roman Catholic Church Extension Society of America, uttered the following in a recent address on church extension and convert making. Without a doubt, if America Protestantism were blotted off the religious map of the world, the work of the so-called reformers of the 15th, 16th, in parentheses and question mark century, within 50 years might well be called dead. The Protestantism in the United States is a great source of missionary activity in foreign countries. The different Protestant organizations in the United States spend $7 million per annum in foreign missions, or almost half the spendings of all the rest of the non-Catholic world. Protestantism, then, really may be said to stand or fall on American effort. From a strategic point of view, America, the United States of America, is our best missionary field. Again, how many are fond of calling this a Protestant country? Is it? We deny. We who hope for a Catholic America have as yet come only to the end of the desert. Only has it been given to some among us to enter the land of Canaan and gather souls, grapes so sweet and beautiful as to fill us with hunger for other fruits that await the coming of our successors. They will go, Joshua's, to the Jordan, to Jericho, to Hai, and to Jerusalem, and then only will the details of the work become clear. The little chapels the church extension movements will build shall be their fortified camps, and the men with whom Paul is fathers of the apostolate will send shall be advance guards to point the way to the new and fertile fields that abound in the promised land. The Very Reverend Kelly and his missionary gangs, including General Secretary, Field Secretary, and Ratoon, travel throughout the western, middle west, and southern states in 2 private chapel cars, which are carried at the expense of the stockholders of the roads over which they are hauled. A vast majority of these stockholders are non-Catholics, and they are defraying the transportation expenses of a propaganda which would blot American Protestantism off the religious map of the world. The patriotic Archbishop Ireland, in presence of Cardinal Gibbons and a large number of prelates, priests, monks, and nuns at Baltimore, Maryland, said in part as follows: the Catholic Church is the sole living and enduring Christian authority. She has the power to speak. She has an organization by which her laws may be enforced. Her work is to make America Catholic. Our cry shall be, God's will it, and our hearts will leap with crusader enthusiasm. To secure the goodwill of non-Catholic politicians, Democratic and Republican, in the ignoble work of making America Catholic, that noted American conjurer, Cardinal Gibbons, surpassed himself in a recent interview given at Philadelphia, while attending the Pallium celebration of Archbishop Pendergast, the champion poker player of Pennsylvania. A summary of the interview appears in the New York Evening Sunday in its issue of February 12, 1912. Gibbons on Taft. Cardinal believes that President will be renominated. Philadelphia, February 2nd. That President Taft probably will be renominated by the Republicans in the belief of Cardinal Gibbons, who made a statement to this effect this afternoon prior to leaving this city for Baltimore. The Cardinal characterized Theodore Roosevelt as the most popular man in the country today, but said that Mr. Taft, being in the saddle, would undoubtedly win the nomination. In a short interview, His Eminence declared that Mr. Taft deserves recognition for what he termed his honest, sincere efforts to serve the country. He said that in considering the election of the Democrats must be considered as they have lots of available presidential timber. I fancy I hear Cardinal Gibbons say, American citizens, find the P, heads I win, tails you lose. Though every millstone along the historical pathway of the Roman Catholic Church has been marked by its curse to humanity, yet there are, unfortunately, some non-Catholic bishops, ministers, editors, and others who, on the plea of toleration, Christian unity, or for business or political reasons, do not like to hear the Roman Catholic politico-religious abomination criticized. In fact, they publicly commend Romanism and its hierarchy, while priests, prelates, and popes condemn them and theirs as heretics, doomed to eternal damnation. Rome regards non-Catholics as heretics. She teaches, both in her churches and schools, they are destined for hell. Here is Rome's doctrine of fraternity, of toleration, of Christian unity. In the Western Watchman, organ of the Pope and Archbishop Glennon, published in St. Louis, Missouri, we find Rome's real attitude toward Protestantism in the following expression of fiendish hatred. Protestantism. We would draw and quarter it. We would impale it and hang it up for crow's meat. We would tear it with pincers and fire it with hot irons. We would fill it with molten lead and sink it in 100 fathoms of hell fire. Wow. It's for God. In another issue of the same paper, December 24th, 1908, we find the following editorial by its editor-in-chief, Reverend David S. Phelan, LLD, rector of Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish, St. Louis, Missouri, and designated by Cardinal Statoli, the dean and senator of the Roman Catholic Journalists of the United States. Protestants were persecuted in France and Spain with the full approval of the church authorities. The church has persecuted. Only a tyro in church history will deny that. We have always defended the persecution of the Huguenots and the Spanish Inquisition. When she thinks it's good to use physical force, she will use it. But will the Catholic Church give bond that she will not persecute at all? Will she guarantee absolute freedom and equality of all churches and all faiths? The Catholic Church gives no bonds for her good behavior. The same papal organ, the Western Watchman, in an issue of 1728, where did that come from? September 28th, 1911, contains the following. Protestantism is simply ruffianism organized into a religion. The first reformer, Martin Luther, was the vilest blackguard of all time, in comparison with whom the Greek Theresites was a Polish... What is wrong with me? Let me reread. I'm so sorry, guys. Protestantism is simply ruffianism, organized into a religion. The first reformer, Martin Luther, was the vilest blackguard of all time. In comparison with the Greek, Theresites was a polished gentleman. All his associates in the sacrilege of sanctuaries and sacking of religious houses were almost to a man men of the lowest character and beastliest morals. But who cares for their private lives? It is this public act and utterance that concern us. These are public property, and they brand their authors as blackguards of the water. And in an editorial in its issue of October 12th, 1911, the Western Watchman confirms the declaration made lately in Cardinal Farley's cathedral by that international Lady Turner, Jesuit Vaughan of England, that Protestantism is dead. Protestantism in the United States has fallen to pieces, but what is more astounding, the ministers look complacently out upon the ruins. All the money in the world will not bring back the spirit that has fled. Even hatred of Catholicity is dead, and nothing now remains but the somber duty of burying the dead. While Rome everlastingly hates non-Catholics, she constantly seeks their financial aid, both private donations and public monies, to be used for her sectarian institutions. With unblushing coolness, the Western Watchman, in its issue of December 16, 1909, declares, "We do not think the church in this country is overburdening herself with charities. She is winning her way to the hearts of the American people by her Christ-like benefits. And the way from the heart to the pocketbook is very short, compared with the long road from the lip to the seat of pity. More Protestant money is finding its way into our charitable institutions than ever before. The duty of supporting our asylums and refuge will soon be borne in great part by people who have no affiliation with the Catholic Church. Here, let me state that these monies are, as a rule, unaccounted for and misused, as is the case in Roman Catholic institutions of Greater New York, where the diversion of large sums of public money paid to said institutions by the city for the support of its chargers is now being investigated by the city comptroller in spite of the objections raised by the Catholic Church authorities and their reluctance to permit the accounts of these institutions to be audited. Cardinal Farley, who controls $60 million worth of property between the Battery and the Bronx alone, through his attorneys, among them Eugene A. Philpin, has been declared that these Roman Catholic institutions would decline to receive any more children and would turn out those already placed there by the city rather than submit to an accounting for the public funds received by them. How beneficent, how Christ-like. Let me throw a little light on Rome's real attitude toward marriage. Popular opinion in the British Empire is just now being greatly stirred by the agitation caused by the need to mirror decree of Pope Pius X, which is producing such havoc in homes where Protestants marry Roman Catholics. One of the unfortunate victims of this infamous decree, a heartbroken wife and mother, has made the following fruitless appeal to the Earl of Aberdeen, the Lord Lieutenant and Governor General of Ireland. May it please your excellency, I pray your excellency's assistance. Hush. Under the following circumstances, I am the daughter of a small farmer in County Antrim and a Presbyterian. I was married in May 1908 in a Presbyterian church by my own clergyman to my husband, who was and is a Roman Catholic. Before our marriage, he arranged with me that I should continue to attend my own place of worship and he his. After our marriage, we lived together for some months at my mother's house in County Antrim, but work called my husband to the west of Ireland, where I joined him, and we lived for some months there. Afterwards, we came to Belfast. There, my first child, a boy, was born in June 1909. During all this time, there never was any difference between us about religious matters, and our boy was baptized by my own clergyman. My husband on Sundays would take care of the baby when I was out at church. A short time before our second baby, a girl, was born in August last. My husband spoke to me about changing my faith. In consequence, he told me of the way the Roman Catholic priest was rating him, and I was visited on several occasions by this priest, who told me I was not married at all, but that I was living in open sin and my children were illegitimate, and he pressed me to come to chapel and be married properly. I told him I was legally married to my husband and that I would not do what he wished. And on one occasion, my husband and I besought him to leave us alone, that we had lived peaceably and agreeably before his interference, and would still continue to do so if he left us alone. He threatened me, if I would not comply with his request, that there would be no peace in the house, that my husband could not live with me, and that if he did, his co-religionists would cease to speak to him or recognize him. When he found he could not persuade me, he left in anger and threatening mood. From this time on, my husband's attitude to me changed, and he made no secret to me of the way he was being influenced. Our second baby was taken out of the house by my husband without my leave and taken to chapel and were baptized. My husband also began to ill-treat me and told me I was not his wife and I was nothing to him but a common woman. I bore it all hoping that his old love for me would show him his error, but the power of the priest was supreme. And on returning to my home some weeks ago, after being out for a time, I found that both of my dear babies had been removed, and my husband refused to tell me where they were. Beyond that, they were in safekeeping. I did everything a mother could think of to get at least to see my babies, but my husband told me he dared not give me any information, and that unless I changed my faith, I could not get them. A day or two after this, on pretense of taking me to see my babies, he got me out of the house for about 2 hours, and on my return I found that everything that had been taken out of the house including my own wearing apparel and underclothing, and I was left homeless and without any means of clothing beyond what I was wearing. My husband left me, and I could not find out where he went. I subsequently saw him at the place where he was working. He was very cross with me, refused to tell me where the children were or to do anything, and told me to go to the priest in whose hands he stated the whole matter was, and also said that unless I was remarried in chapel, I would never see the children. I subsequently saw the priest, who said he could give me no information and treated me with scant courtesy. I have tried to find my husband, but have failed, and cannot now get any information of his whereabouts or of that of my babies, and I do not even know if they are alive. My heart is breaking. I am told the police can do nothing in the matter, although if it were only a shilling that was stolen, they would be on the search for the thief. But my babies are worth more to me than 1 shilling. In my despair, I am driven to apply to you, as the head of all authority in this country, for help. I am without money, and but for the charity of kind friends, I would be starving. I want to get my children and to know if they are alive. And I have been told, kind sir, that if you directed your law officers to make inquiries, you could soon get me my rights. Will you please do so and help a poor, heartbroken woman who will continue to pray for the Almighty's blessings upon you and yours, Mrs. McCann. This is only one specimen of the havoc wrought by the Ni Timri decree of the present Vicar of Christ. In order to give the reader an idea of what is taking place across the border in Western Canada, I quote from press reports of recent date as follows. From the Pioneer, Vancouver, British Columbia, December 23, 1911. Bigamy, promoted by the Roman Catholic Church. Winnipeg, December 23rd. Reverend Father Camo, resident priest of St. Mary's Church here, has made the following statement to an evening paper in regard to the recent Ni Timri case at St. Boniface, when he refused to permit a Catholic woman to see her Protestant husband unless they were remarried by the church. Suppose a Roman Catholic and a Protestant wish to get married. We will imagine the husband to be a Catholic. The parties are married by a Protestant minister. Protestant minister. The moment the marriage is contracted, the husband has forsaken the Catholic doctrine and can be no longer recognized as a true Catholic. The only way he can come back into the fold is by getting his legal wife to be married to him by a Catholic priest, according to the conditions of the Catholic Church, that is. That she will not interfere with the practice of the doctrine, and the children shall be brought up in the Catholic faith. If the wife refuses and he insists on coming back to the church, the husband must take a vow never to live with her again. If, when reinstated as a Catholic, the man wishes to marry another woman the ceremony to be performed by a Catholic priest. Asked the reporter, may he do it? Well, was the reply, we try and get the man to seek a divorce from the state first, because in the eyes of the law he is still married. And while the church does not recognize it, we do not want to lay ourselves open to persecution. There is a way out, and that is by having a secret marriage. Take this as an instance. I am sent away to a mission, a long way up in the country. When I arrive, a man comes to me and says, Father, I have committed a sin for which I am truly repentant. 3 years ago, I was married to a Protestant woman, by a Protestant minister. Later, we separated. We did not get a divorce, and now I am living with another woman. Will you marry us? I might say, I will run the risk and marry you in the eyes of God. I then get 2 witnesses whom I can trust never to reveal what has taken place, and I marry the parties in secret. After this, they can never part, as there is no such thing as a divorce in the Roman Catholic Church. Then they are married in the eyes of God and the church, and although perhaps not according to the law of the state, if the former wife should get to know of the second marriage, I might be persecuted. One never knows. The following editorial of the Weekly People, published in Western Canada, January 13, 1912, may help to enlighten the reader about the promotion of bigamy by the Roman Catholic hierarchy. A Catholic priest promoting bigamy. A cog must have slipped from the brains and tongue of Father Camus, the resident priest of Winnipeg, an interview with whom appears in the Vancouver Pioneer of last December 23rd. The interview is a dead giveaway. The Father Camus' explicit answer to the reporter for the Pioneer concerning the case of a Catholic who married a Protestant woman and who, seeing his wife refuses to submit to the conditions of the Catholic Church, leaves her and insists upon returning to his church and wishes to be married to another woman by a priest. Father Camus' explicit answer to the hypothetical case was that he would get 2 witnesses whom I can trust never to reveal what has taken place, and I marry the parties in secret, adding that he knew that if the former wife should get to know of the second marriage, he might be persecuted. Prosecution under the law, the Father calls persecution. It is of no consequence to the issue whether law is wise or not that defines bigamy and enters the act in the criminal code. The only thing that concerns the issue is that a man married under the law and not legally divorced is, under the law, a bigamist and punishable as such if married again during his first wife's life. Such is the law of the land in Winnipeg. All this notwithstanding, Father Camus stands forth not only as a condoner, but as a promoter of bigamy. And not only that, he stands forth as an encourager of others to steep themselves in crime as witnesses who are to keep the secret. Again and again, the Daily People has maintained and proved the claim with facts that the Roman Catholic hierarchy is not the priesthood of a religion, but the agency of politics ambushed behind religion. Again and again, the Daily People has pointed out that, differently from other political parties, all of whom, whatever new policies that they may advocate, submit to the existing policies until overthrown. The Roman Catholic political party starts by disregarding the existing policies and violating them. In Eastern Canada, where very many of the French Canadians are driven like dumb cattle by the Roman Catholic hierarchy, this infamous and ungodly decree is enforced, and happy homes are broken up by priests and prelates. Archbishop Bourchechi of Montreal, the coming Canadian cardinal, being the principal home and marriage breaker. Let no one suppose that this ne timere decree of Pope Pius X is a dead letter in the United States, the land of the free and the home of the brave, or that I have to confine myself to the British Empire for examples of its having been put into actual practice. Archbishop Glennon of St. Louis, Missouri, USA, the warm friend of President William H. Taft and ex-President Theodore Roosevelt, annulled the marriage of Mr. John A. Holland and Mrs. Helen O'Brien Holland because they were married by a Baptist minister, and he compelled Mrs. Holland to sign the following un-American and un-Christ-like apology which was read in the churches and published in the press of America and other non-Catholic countries. St. Louis, Missouri, October 29, 1910, to the Reverend Peter J. O'Rourke, pastor of St. Mark's Church, Page and Academy Avenues. Dear Father, in submission to the obligation laid on me by His grace, the Reverend Archbishop, of publicly repairing the scandal I have given as a requisite for abolition, I confess to the world as a Catholic. I was married by a Baptist minister on August 26, 1910. I ask the pardon of God for my sin and the prayers of the faithful for the grace of sincere repentance. Wow. Sincerely, Helen O'Brien. Think of the awful crime of being married by a Protestant minister. In the metropolitan province of New York, presided over by Cardinal Crowley, the story of the following case in the Diocese of Trenton, New Jersey, directly ruled by Bishop McFall, a croup gun of the hierarchy, should arouse the millions of people who were born outside the Pale of Rome and consequently illegitimate, according to her decrees and teaching, as well as those who are living in concubinage, because they have been married by non-Catholic clergymen, justices of the peace or judges of the Supreme Court, the King and Queen of British Empire, the Emperor and Empress of Germany, President and Mrs. William H. Taft, ex-President and Mrs. Theodore Roosevelt, Honorable Mr. and Mrs. William Jennings Bryan, Governor and Mrs. Woodrow Wilson, Mr. and Mrs. J.P. Morgan, Mr. and Mrs. John D. Rockefeller, Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Carnegie, Mr. and Mrs. Jacob Schiff, and their children are among the millions who have been declared by the vicars of Christ to be illegitimate, heretics, etc., whom the cardinals, old and new, have solemnly sworn to combat with every effort. I can understand how sincere non-Catholic people treat with silent contempt the teaching of the Roman Catholic Church, that outside of Rome there is no salvation, but I cannot understand how they can complacently suffer the insult from the Pope of Rome, who, with the quintessence of audacity, decrees and teaches that all those who are born of marriages contracted outside the Roman Catholic Church, the one true church, are illegitimate, and that all parties having contracted marriage, as above stated, are living in concubinage. The case set forth in the following letter will serve as another example of Rome's real attitude toward non-Catholic marriages. Perth Amboy, New Jersey, February 3rd, 1912. Mr. Jeremiah J. Crowley, New York City. Gentlemen, I respectfully ask for your advice in a very important matter. Stephen Daganya, a Roman Catholic Hungarian, married a Hungarian girl, a member of my parish. The ceremony was performed by me in my church. When a child was born from this wedlock, it was taken to Reverend Francis Gross, priest of the local Hungarian church, who said to be the party that a marriage performed by a Protestant minister or judge is entirely null. The father and mother have to remarry before him in order to get a lawful marriage. However, he baptized the child and issued a certificate of baptism in which he declared that the child was illegitimate. He added also that the parents are living in concubinage. He affixed to it his signature and the seal of the church. The certificate with two other similar ones is now with Mr. Charles M. Snow, editor of Liberty, who wants to make photos of them. As the father of the child is very desperate on account of the behavior of his priest, will you kindly advise him what to do under these circumstances? Has any priest any right in this country to declare that a marriage which is lawful in the eyes of the country and according to the conscience of the party was concubinage, and the fruit of such marriage was illegitimate? Thanking you in advance for your valuable information in this matter, I am very truly yours, signed L. Menace, pastor of the Hungarian Reformed Church. My reply to the above letter was as follows. Cincinnati, Ohio, March 29, 1912. Reverend L. Menace, pastor of the Hungarian Reformed Church, Perth Amboy, New Jersey. Reverend and dear sir, your letter of February 3rd, 1912, addressed to my late residence in New York City has just reached me, and I hastened to reply. While in Washington, D.C. weeks ago, I saw and read the certificates to which you refer in your letter, and now that you have asked me personally to advise the desperate husband and father, Stephen Daganya, as to what he should do under the circumstances, I would suggest that the Reverend Francis Gross be prosecuted for criminal libel, and that this be made a test case in the interest of humanity. However, knowing the powerful and iniquitous influence of Rome over the civil courts, particularly when the plaintiffs or defendants possess slender means, I would suggest that a public appeal be made for adequate funds to thoroughly prosecute the case. To the millions who have been and are now indirectly charged by Rome with living in concubinage or with being illegitimate. In case of an adverse decision in the lower courts through the influence of Rome, the case should be appealed and, if needs be, carried to the Supreme Court of the United States, over which Chief Justice White, a Jesuitical Roman Catholic, presides by the favor of President Taft. And in case of an adverse decision by that august body through the influence of the Roman Catholic hierarchy, I would suggest that the case be brought before Congress without delay, and if necessary before the bar of a public opinion, as Rome, through her Jesuitical decrees, policies, and practices, is undermining the inviolability of the home and peace of nations. Rome hopes to gain complete political control of our beloved country through the cunning political influence of her 4 American cardinals at the coming presidential election. Therefore, immediate exposure must be made of her in the civil courts and otherwise if the liberties of this country are to be preserved. I shall be able to take the matter up with you personally in the near future. Believe me, very truly yours, signed, Jeremiah J. Crowley. Listening to the following story of what occurred quite recently in Washington, D.C., a young man of that city, a Protestant by birth and education, aged 28 years, had been paying his honorable attentions to a young lady aged 22 years. His courtship was successful and the pair agreed to be married. The young lady was a Roman Catholic. Her faith in that church and its priests had been weakened by a number of circumstances, and especially by the fact that upon one occasion, when she went to confession, she was met in the confessional box by her then pastor, who smelled very strongly of intoxicating drink. She went home and told her mother about it, adding that his breath smelled perfectly awful. However, she continued a member of the church up to the time of her marriage to the young gentleman above referred to. The marriage was performed in Washington, D.C., September 16, 1911, in a Protestant church and by a Baptist minister. Within a week, September 22, 1911, the young bride received a telephone message from her sister asking her to come over to her parents' home. She went, and her sister told her that she had received a letter from her mother, who was then at Colonel Beach, in which her mother expressed the desire that she go to see her late pastor, Reverend P.J. O'Connell, St. Vincent's Church, South Capitol, and North Street, Washington, D.C. The young bride said that she had no desire to see Reverend O'Connell, but that she would call on him to please Mama. Accordingly, she immediately went to see the priest. After some preliminary and formal conversation about the different matters, the priest asked her, "Have you yet had your vacation?" "Yes," replied the lady, "and during my vacation I was married." "Married? Married? And who married you?" asked the priest. "A Baptist minister," replied the lady. "You are not married. Why did you not come and consult me about getting married?" She said, "I did not care to." The priest then asked her, "Did you not hear the rules about marriage reading from the altar about 2 years ago?" She said, "I do not know whether I did or not." He said, "Why did you not come to me and find out?" She replied, "I did not care to know." The priest then angrily exclaimed, "You are not married. You are the same as a woman who walks the street," and added, "You are not sane. You are the same as a woman that a man would take to a room in a hotel and live with. You are the same as a woman in the division." The division in Washington, D.C. means the same as is understood by the red light section in other cities. Here the lady burst into tears, and the priest, thinking he had her going, added in great anger and terrific tones, "You are not married, and if you should die tomorrow morning, your body would not be allowed to be brought inside of the Catholic Church." And the lady had now quite recovered herself and replied defiantly, "I know that, and I do not care." The priest now opened another view of the subject. He remarked, "You could leave that man tomorrow morning and marry someone else, because you are not a married woman." The lady answered, "I will not leave my husband, and if I did, I would have to go to the law for divorce and not come to you." The priest, finding himself baffled in all efforts, continued exclaiming, "You are not married, you are not married. The idea of such a thing, you are not married." The young lady now told the priest that she was well aware that she was not married according to the rules of the Roman Catholic Church, but that she was legally married, and that was sufficient for her, and defied the priest to deny that her marriage was lawful. Thereupon the priest left the room in a rage, and the young lady went to her home. She was at first reluctant to relate this interview to her husband, because she did not want him to know that her late pastor would presume to talk to her in such a manner. A few days afterwards, however, she did tell him. Upon hearing the story, her husband said that if he had been present, one of the two of Menace. Upon hearing the story, her husband said that if he had been present, one of the two would have taken place in the hospital, adding, "He had better not meet me on the street." Let no one suppose for a moment that the views here expressed are only those of an individual priest acting on his own responsibility. This is not the case. Some views are not private views. The Ni Temeri decree declares that marriages under the law of the land are invalid, and that a Catholic going through this ceremony has not contracted matrimony and may be married again. Under the law of the land, such a second marriage without a decree of divorce is the crime of bigamy, and the Catholic priests and prelates are justified and authorized by the Church not only to pronounce such marriages invalid and to inform any subject of the Church of his or her right to contract a new marriage, but that the priest is further authorized to become a party to the crime of bigamy by performing the second marriage himself. The thoughtful reader will lay it to heart that the event which the foregoing story records took place in the city of Washington, the capital of this nation, where President Taft presides, and who has declared that there is a perfect consistency between earnest devotion to the Church and perfect obedience to the laws of the land. And further, that the event occurred in the Archdiocese of Cardinal Gibbons, who poses par excellence as the great defender of law and order, and as which he has been eulogized by Theodore Roosevelt. The annulling of marriages by Rome is not a rare occurrence. While she sternly denounces divorce as one of the greatest evils of the age, she frequently annuls marriages for the graft that is in it, or to show her disregard for the civil laws and marriage ceremonies performed by non-Catholic clergy. Priests and prelates have wrecked many homes and families. We even find them co-respondents in divorce suits, yet they continue to minister at the altar and in confessionals. Baroness von Zetwitz declared shortly before her mysterious death that she would expose some of the crimes of popes, prelates, and priests, were it not for the fact that such exposure would most assuredly break up many prominent homes, both in America and Europe. In order to avoid scandal, protect the Roman Catholic hierarchy of both sexes, and show contempt for the civil law, Pope Pius X issued a bull, Motu Proprio, which excommunicates any person, lay or cleric, man or woman, who shall, without the permission of ecclesiastical authorities, summon any Roman Catholic ecclesiastic before a lay tribunal, either in a civil or criminal case. The main part of the bull reads as follows. In these evil days, when ecclesiastical immunities receive no consideration, and not only priests and clerics, but even bishops and cardinals of the Holy Roman Church are cited before lay tribunals, This condition of things absolutely demands us to restrain by severe penalty those who cannot be otherwise deterred from the commission of so heinous a crime against the religious character. Therefore, by this motu proprio, we determine and ordain that whatever private person, lay or cleric, man or woman, shall, without having obtained permission of ecclesiastical authority, cite to a lay tribunal and compel to appear there publicly any ecclesiastical person, either in a criminal or civil case, will incur excommunication, specially reserved to the Roman Pontiff. This, by these letters, is decided, and we wish it to stand ratified, everything to the contrary notwithstanding. Given at St. Peter's the 9th day of October, 1911, the 9th year of our pontificate, Pius PPX. This recent decree of Pope Pius X is a gigantic bluff to intimidate not only his Catholic subjects, but also the rulers and governments of non-Catholic countries and their subjects. To many, it would seem incredible that such things could happen in the 20th century and under constitutional governments. Why do not the rulers and the government of all non-Catholic countries step in to protect the rights of the people from such dangerous and infamous invasion by the Pope of Rome, as did the government of Russia, which recently prosecuted Bishop Kazimir Rozovsky, suffragan bishop to the Archbishop of Warsaw, and Father Klinsky on the charge of declaring a legal marriage null and thus infringing civil authority. The result was a sentence of 16 months imprisonment for both priest and bishop. The term is to be passed in a fortress, and the bishop is to be deposed from his diocese. Russia knows Rome and therefore nips her in the bud in order to prevent her gaining supremacy over civil authority. If the other non-Catholic countries had only done likewise, or would even do it now, Romanism would not wield the powerful, iniquitous influence which it does. Why do not the governments of the British Empire and the United States prosecute and punish, according to law, priests, prelates guilty of similar and far worse crimes? Because they are in the pocket of Rome, that's why. Okay, that ends that chapter. Next time we'll pick up in chapter 12, Rome and America. Until then, keep your eyes on Jesus, brothers and sisters, and your nose in the book, which is the Word of God. And let us embed the Word of God upon the tablets of our hearts, so you and I will not sin against God or be deceived. Have a great day.